Thursday, 24th, Board of Selectmen meeting. I am John Jeffries, Chairman of the Board. Robin Hunter, Bob Springett are both here. Robin, Bob, would you identify yourself for the recording?
Robin Hunter here.
Bob Springett, present.
This evening's meeting is being conducted via Zoom, consistent with Governor Baker's orders from 2020, which seems like a whole long time ago. We are also meeting jointly with the Board of Health. Jerry, Kay, would you
This is a joint meeting that the Dover Board of Health is attending, a meeting hosted by the Board of Selectmen. It is indeed Thursday, February 24th at 7:03 in the evening. I am Gerald Clark, the chair, and I'll ask each of the two members to identify themselves. Okay, you're muted. Steve, you want to identify yourself?
Stephen Kruskow, Board of Health member.
And then Kate. Okay. Additionally, I notice we have a advisor to the board present, John Quackenbush, doctor, a member of the Harvard School of Public Health faculty.
Hi, everyone. John Quackenbush.
And one of our health agents who handles mostly engineering and septic work on the phone is Michael Jerry.
Hello, Mike.
Hi.
Thank you, Jerry. So to kick off this evening's meeting, from a protocol standpoint, Chris?
Yep, John. Yep, that sounds good. Both boards have called the meeting to order. So I think, John, if it's all right with you, what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn it over to Kay. I know that she'd spoken with the Board of Health and she'd reached out to me to give me a kind of a general framework of kind of the presentation for this evening. So I'd kick it over to Kay, but it looks like Bob might have a question.
Did we do citizens' comments before we start?
There was no public comment, I believe, listed on the agenda.
Okay, I would like to introduce two people from Community Paradigm, the two consultants who have done the work for the Board of Health consultation, Bridget Sweet and Ray Santilli. Oh, there you are, Bridget. I didn't see you for a second. The plan is for them to present a summary of their review of the Board of Health and their recommendations tonight, and then for us to discuss what they have to say. I hope you've all received a copy of the written report in advance and had a chance to look at it. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Thank you, Kay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having Dr. Sweet and I with you this evening. As you know, we completed our assessment of the Dover Board of Health and submitted a report with a number of recommendations. As part of the process, we interviewed about 15 individuals, including most of you who are attending here this evening. We also obtained a number of documents and financial data from the Board of Health's administrative assistant. And then we also did a comparison of 23 other communities, 10 communities that Dover normally uses for collective bargaining comparison purposes. We then also went to 9 other communities in Massachusetts that are similar in size to Dover. And in order to complete the process, we also looked at the bordering communities to Dover that weren't included in either of the first 2 categories. So that was an additional 4 communities. As most of you know, the current staffing for the Board of Health, the only budgeted position is a part-time administrative assistant. For the past number of months, there's also been a temporary part-time clerical person. The animal inspector is specifically included in the board's operating budget. And then all other positions that do tasks for the board are contracted position, either with a written contract or mostly by verbal arrangements. That includes the septic agent, the well agent, food inspections that are conducted by ESI Qual, and the Visiting Nurses Association. The septic agent does have a written agreement, and both he and the well agent are paid based on a fee schedule that is attached to the septic agent's contract. And that fee schedule is basically a significant portion of each of the fees that are assessed by the Board of Health for the various tasks that are performed. In fiscal year 21, this group earned just over $90,000 for the year. For the first 6 months of fiscal year 22 through the end of December, the group has earned about $53,000. The inspectors are all paid from the 4 revolving funds that are authorized to the Board of Health from town meeting. In fiscal year 21, the revenue brought into these revolving funds was approximately $102,000. For the first 6 months of fiscal year 22, the revenue has been just about $60,000. So a bigger increase of about 20%. During our assessment, we found that this arrangement of contracted agents caused major inefficiencies in the operations of the Board of Health. And I will now have Dr. Sweet elaborate a little bit on these inefficiencies.
Sorry, I think I'd be better at unmuting myself by now, 2 years into this. Hi, everyone. Bridget Sweet. So part of the challenge is that, the contractors do a great job, but it does develop significant inefficiencies from the customer service standpoint. And it's really all about kind of understanding what type of Board of Health and Health Department Dover would envision in the future. Obviously, as we know, public health is not one size fits all. So it really kind of depends on what the community stakeholders would envision to have that fully complement of staff within that office. But some of the major inefficiencies that can be highlighted are related to scheduling inspections and turnaround time, or also with vacation and time off for the agents. And obviously everyone deserves that time off, but if there's someone taking 2 weeks vacation and someone's trying to put a home in with a septic system, that could create delays and inefficiencies in the process moving forward. In addition, the applicant would have to contact the office to schedule an inspection, and the applicant would wait for the administrative assistant to call the homeowner back for that process. So again, sort of from a customer service standpoint, some inefficiencies. Another challenge is also related to the record keeping. And as we know, public health data is reported to the state, and there is supposed to be consistent record keeping processes. And when you have a variety of contractors, some of that can get lost in translation and confusion. So just making sure, again, that there is that sort of more efficient process from the customer service standpoint, as well as delivery of services. The other opportunities are also related to the restructuring of public health across the state with the SAFE 2.0 Act. So we did use that to really drive a lot of our recommendations and really ensure that there is a credentialed and well-qualified workforce in that role. And again, that's to help support the community in all aspects of public health, not just the inspectional services component.
The other inefficiency that I would mention too is that based on having all of these contracted agents, the services provided by the Board of Health are basically reactive in nature. None of the agents, one of the agents works at another part-time employment for the town, but they're basically reacting to when a permit comes in or whatever. There's no proactive processes pretty much in place across the board. The staffing recommendations that we submitted, we believe will have a minimal impact on the board's operating budget, with the sole exception of, if adopted, the town would need to make a decision regarding health insurance costs. The two positions that we have recommended, both would be eligible for health insurance benefits. Instead of having a contracted septic agent, a contracted well agent, and then an arrangement with ESI Qual for food inspections, we are recommending that the Board of Health hire a full-time health agent. The position would be funded by user-generated permit fees that are already in place. We've provided in our report a draft position description, as well as a salary recommendation based on the salary scale that is now in the town of Dover, as well as a comparison. Bridget, can you talk a little bit about what the duties and responsibilities of the full-time person would be?
Sure. And again, with the advent of a full-time person within the office, it would also allow for sustainability and business continuity. And having a fully credentialed staff member in the office would take some of the burden on some of the interaction that the board is currently held to, because there is not someone there full-time with the knowledge of a public health agent. Again, utilizing the framework from the SAFE 2.0 blueprint, if there was going to be an agent, it would be someone who had the background of a registered sanitarian, again, allowing credence to that certification. In addition with that would be, there's requirement for additional training through the local public health institute provided by BU. And again, it just gives a really nice general overview of all of the auspices of public health within that department. If you have a full-time agent within the office as well, it also does allow the Board of Health in the town to create more essential public health services, as opposed to just that bare minimum of the inspectional services. So you could do monitoring population health, you could do a lot more outreach within the community, and really help build that healthy community engagement surrounding public health, not just inspectional services. And historically across the state in Massachusetts, we have had the challenge of being a bare minimum required services type of department in all different areas of public health. But looking at communities like Brookline, Needham, Cambridge, Worcester, where they're really starting to champion public health in general and increase the overall health and well-being of the community, if you had a full-time health agent in that role, you'd be able to build some of those programs. As well as creating and implementing policies and programs and recommendations to the board for them to kind of vote on and still have that policy auspice of the Board of Health. On top of that, we'd also, with someone full-time in the office, would allow for organizational infrastructure. So some of the inefficiencies that just sort of happen in small town municipality government would be ironed out with someone there full-time and able to really create some different standard operating procedures and really policies for day-to-day work. Again, creating more of a customer service robust environment.
The other fact that I would point out, by having a full-time health agent, the town would actually have someone for a greater number of hours or a lot less money than you currently have with the bits and pieces that are going on. So that would be also a plus. You'd have more hours, less money, more time to spend in the community and manage the health department affairs. Before I continue, I just want to point out that Bernie Lynch, the principal of Community Paradigm Associates, has also joined us this evening. The next recommendation we have is the implementation of a part-time public health nurse. And we have submitted a recommendation that this public health nurse be 25 hours a week. Again, we've provided a position description and a salary recommendation for the position. In order to fund this position, our first recommendation would be that you reallocate the VNA funds that are currently in the town and the departments in the Board of Health's operating budget, which is approximately $10,000 to $12,000. And then as we go on further in our report, we also recommend that town meeting implement an additional revolving fund that Bridget can expand a little bit upon.
Sure. So again, yes, with the recommendation of a part-time public health nurse, obviously following COVID, health departments were inundated with challenges as they did contact tracing, et cetera. With some of that alleviating, however, there's still a desire or a need for there to be a strong public health advocate within the community, especially in the nursing community. And this would enable, again, your community partners to take advantage of blood pressure clinics directly in the community, flu clinics, and other types of immunizations right within that small office type setting. In addition, there's the opportunity again for additional community engagement and education. And we have seen after COVID or concurrent with COVID, a massive partnership with school nurses and local public health nurses. And that also gets more information out to your younger community and population. Utilizing a public health nurse within your community could also create education around tobacco cessation, mental health needs, and other types of challenges as they're happening across the community. So really just creating a more robust public health department to offer to your community. So it comes back to that customer service aspect and what kind of community engagement you may be looking for. There have been, just as an aside, sorry, right?
No, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. There have been several communities that have transitioned from VNA contracts to either part-time or public health nurses based on COVID, but also because public health has been a challenge in Massachusetts, and it's not just because of COVID. There have been research and studies, as early as 2016 with the Special Commission on Local and Regional Public Health, because we know that there are disparities upon service delivery and models and how we best protect and promote public health. So since 2016, there have been blueprints and ideas on how to get better access to our community members for public health. So there have been several communities directly, even adjacent to Dover and in that surrounding area, that have discontinued VNA use and gone to either a part-time or a full-time public health nurse to provide additional supports to their community.
We've also provided an alternative recommendation to a public health nurse, and we'll discuss that a little further when we get to shared services. In terms of clerical support, we are recommending that the administrative assistant be increased to full-time status. Currently, the administrative assistant is budgeted at 28 hours a week, but in reality, she is working somewhere around 34, 35 hours a week, and has been for a while. She is spending roughly 4 to 6 hours a week currently transcribing minute meetings. We think that at some point in time that will diminish, hopefully, knock on wood. But we think that by putting full-time staff, a full-time health inspector, and even a part-time nurse, she will be able to support them a greater in the office, providing greater efficiencies. Bridget?
I would concur. Again, the other challenge with the pandemic has been public health has been much more visible. So historically, health departments are receiving a variety of different calls where they may not have received 3 to 5 years ago. With the pandemic, the Board of Health and health departments have become pivotal in every single business organization, as well as in people's homes. So there's a lot more inquiry and concern from residents for a variety of reasons, and the number of complaints has gone up across the state as a result of COVID. In addition to having the administrative assistant full-time, she would also be able to sort of create a larger dent in some of the filing challenges that exist. When you're sort of short-staffed, you prioritize, or when you're super busy with the pandemic, you prioritize based on need. So there's a great deal of sort of backup work that needs to be completed. And if she was full-time, that would allow her to do so without creating a whole ton of burnout. And the other piece that would also enable the administrative assistant to take part in is some of the emergency preparedness meetings that she historically had taken part of prior to COVID. And those are important regardless of what role you are in public health, because it allows you to network with your peer communities and figure out best practices. So she would be able to return to some of those activities, creating, again, a more robust department for whether it's a resident concern, a customer concern, or a municipal concern.
As part of that, we're also recommending that, at least for now, the board maintain its part-time clerical support until things quiet down a little bit and the administrative assistant is able to focus more on the tasks rather than minute meetings. We also feel that this position could be helpful with the implementation of a public health nurse in doing the necessary insurance reimbursement that we believe will help fund the position through the additional revolving account. Before Bridget gets into more of the shared services potential, one of the things that we also mentioned in the report is our discussion with the health administrator in Sherburne. They are also considering a part-time public health nurse in the upcoming year. So one of the things that we brought forward for you to consider is perhaps working along with Sherburne and sharing the public health nurse. The state, for the state's Department of Public Health, the last couple of years has been giving grants out, especially for this purpose of communities sharing such a position. The applications for these grants typically come out in late spring, and they're listed on Combis that I'm sure the town participates in as part of its purchasing and procurement process. So it's an alternative that we're giving. Obviously, in sharing with Sherburne, if you do an equal share, it's roughly 18 or so hours a week rather than the 25. But it's a beginning, and with the grants by DPH, it will also assist in the funding for such a position. And then for the rest of the shared services, Bridget?
So part of the recommendation from the SAFE 2.0 is to really increase shared services and cross-jurisdictional services to, again, better promote and protect public health. So there have been a series of grants that have been issued. There are member communities across the state that have started some of their coalitions. Some are as few as 3. They're all with at least 3 towns, but many of them have increased to upwards of 10. There's still the option to sort of step into some of these agreements, even though they have been initiated. So Dr. Sam Wong has been facilitating and allowing communities to kind of come in after the fact to still receive some of the services that are being provided. In the shared services model, it varies depending on what type of grant you're receiving, but there is cross contact tracing grants available. There's epidemiological and environmental services, and part of the environmental services shared services would alleviate some of the burden of the inspections that are occurring from ESI qual. So it would be camp and your restaurant inspections. I know that's not very many, but it still allows that to be greater depth. And through cross-jurisdictional services as well, you get coverage during vacations, during time off if someone is ill. And again, it still promotes and promulgates sharing of best practices. So through that cross-jurisdictional sharing, you also get, again, more qualified and better, I shouldn't say better, qualified and credentialed staff to help support the community as they move through some of these needs for inspectional services, et cetera. It's constantly sort of evolving. So we're seeing different towns jump into different shared services. There's really no one size fits all approach. And it really does depend upon what type of services you want to engage within your community. The state is really local public health, the Department of Public Health in the state are really encouraging more communities to branch into some of these agreements. Some of them are straight for emergency preparedness, but again, it does build a more diverse and a larger depth within your pool in case something should happen.
Want to just jump into SAFE 2.0?
That's basically part of actually that is kind of the SAFE 2.0. So it's again just building and maintaining our stronger organizational infrastructure for public health and ensuring that services are met. It is also utilizing a sort of a network or a ladder system to ensure that your staff are properly credentialed and trained to maintain some of these roles. Luckily, you do have very well qualified contractors working in your community, but there have been some instances where people may not have been qualified or educated to conduct some of these inspections. Not a challenge here in your community, but again, making sure that there is that sort of baseline and ensuring that public health is protected as best we can. SAFE 2.0 is continuing. I know that Representative Garlick has someone on the line here, and she's been a champion in the public health realm for SAFE 2.0. And again, it's really just to ensure that overall as a state, we're reducing the inefficiencies and the inequalities in access to public health and creating a more robust state for all.
One of the other inefficiencies that we identified, and it's well known in the town, is the lack of online permitting and electronic record keeping. In discussions with the town administrator and the town clerk, we have been told that funding has already started to implement such a process in town in the various departments and whatever, and that the Board of Health is on the list to be done, not as one of the primary departments, but it is on the list. So we touched on that a little bit in the report. In terms of overall budget impact of these recommendations, the implementation of these recommended staffing requirements, again, we believe should have minimal impact on the annual operating budget of the Board of Health. Currently, the operating budget includes the salaries of the 2 part-time clerical positions, funding for the VNA services and the animal inspector, payments to the 2 contracted inspectors, as well as the SI call through the approved revolving funds. Based on the staffing recommendations, and let me point out, based on some of the concerns that we've been hearing, these recommendations are not an all or nothing. It could be done in phases, it could be done some, it could be none, whatever the board and the town decides. But we believe the salary of the full-time health agent would be paid through the revolving funds. Also, a portion of the administrative assistance work that's dedicated to inspection activities, the additional hours for the administrative assistant can also be funded through these revolving funds. The revenue, as expressed earlier, the revenue in the existing revolving funds suffice for both of these increased hours and new position. With the addition of a part-time public health nurse, there would no longer be a need for the VNA, resulting in minimal savings of plus or minus $10,000 in the designated line item. This dollar amount obviously can be moved to the salary line items to offset the anticipated salary of the public health nurse. Once the activities of the public health nurse increase and the process of medical insurance reimbursements takes place, consideration can be given to funding a portion of that person's salary through the additional revolving fund that we've recommended. As stated at the beginning, the major budgetary impact for the town will be funding benefits for either of these positions if you decide to go ahead. Questions, comments?
So, Ray, thank you. Before we open it up to questions, Ray, I just want to ask Jerry if he has any other comments, additional comments that he wants to make, or if any of the members of the Board of Health want to make comments in addition to this.
I think that the report in many ways mirrors what has been put into the previous year's annual town report and is covered actually in great depth, as you will see when it's printed, this year's annual town report, pointing out exactly the same initiatives that one would hope we could proceed with. I would urge the Board of Selectmen to allow the Board of Health. As you know, it has been 5 years during which the Board of Health has attempted to introduce to the Board of Selectmen the capability of doing online permitting, and with a particular vendor who has become the predominant vendor, with whom David Sullivan has experience, our agent Felix Zimmel is currently using, so that they're a well-known entity. And the most significant several benefits of that are, number one, the very inefficiencies that were discussed this evening in terms of not only permits, but also office time spent interacting with residents, real estate brokers, contractors, and the like would be dramatically reduced. There would be less chasing of what has happened with this permit, who's got it, what was the process, because the system that exists that is used by other municipalities, Franklin County most specifically, but Methuen shortly, are a workflow system that the public can see, and the public can submit permit applications directly, and it would finally, and I don't mean to use the word force, but it would enforce the submission of all plans electronically so that they can be far more efficiently stored for the future and indexed, and with the requirement that the state is now seeking to impose of having the GIS, GPS locations of the various specific structures on the submittal. So given that the Commonwealth provided us funding for this some years ago, and the monies have been essentially waiting for us to proceed, I would hope you would give us the opportunity to proceed with that expeditiously, because if you are discussing the various initiatives that this report, as well as the annual town report for 2020, display, one of the most significant and most effective initiative addressing much of the clerical work and interaction with so many individuals of the public would finally become modern day efficient and very well accepted.
Thank you, Jerry. I will remind you and remind everyone that's on the call this evening. I'm sure Robin and Bob will both echo this, that technology for the past 4 years, in probably going back even further, but certainly in the last 4 years, technology, workflow, process engineering, modernization, from everything from mapping to just utilizing technology has been a major priority in every area the board has addressed. Literally, one of the first things this configuration of this board did was visit the permitting process in the town of Westwood. Bob and I went, visited with them, looked at everything that they're doing. So Jerry, we appreciate those comments and can only assure you that that is something, the modernization and the process improvement, the engineering is something that this board of selectmen has been very, very well aware of and on top of for a long time. It is, as everyone on the call knows, it's a slow, methodical process, and you want to make sure you get it right and not just spend money for the sake of spending money. So,
John, I'm glad that you remember my introducing you to this system in Westwood and bringing first you and then bringing Robert to see it. So I'm glad you do remember that.
Jerry, I remember everything. So thank you for that. So just a couple of quick comments from me, and then we're going to open it up to questions from Robin and Bob. So Bridget, one of the things that you said repeatedly in your remarks were and I just want to make sure I get it right from you, the credentialing. You said that the credentialing of the current practitioners and contractors and agents, that the recommendations would provide consistency. Are the current practitioners and agents properly credentialed right now?
Yes, and I think I did make reference to the fact that you do have your current contractors are properly credentialed. Felix is very well credentialed. Mike is credentialed for the role that he's providing. I don't know offhand who you're using individually for ESI qual, but where they're not doing environmental work, all they would need is a certified food protection manager. So they have that. But Mike and Felix are both very well credentialed. Yes.
Okay. So the full-time health agent for the food services, and can you give me a little bit more depth and a little bit more color with regards to food services? We have the deli, the Dunkin' Donuts, the market, the gas station. What other food services are you referring to that are full-time in nature?
Well, the full-time agent would encompass both Mike and Felix's role and the food inspection. So it would be everything, not just food. You don't have enough food to justify having a full-time person do that. Again, school supports, your elementary schools, those cafeterias would be inspected. Anytime there is a temporary food event, if there's a festival in town or in the community where you're having a food truck or some other type of food service, those should also be inspected for minimum standards. But you don't have the depth of a million restaurants that you have to worry about that. But the goal would be to have, one person do everything to mitigate some of those inefficiencies, or the recommendation if you so choose.
We use Robin as the food inspector for the events and weddings and things like that. And we use Bob Springett and I for the alcohol and for the drinking beverage part of the food inspector. Those jobs are coveted. So I'm kidding on that.
But John, are you credentialed?
No, not well. I am experienced. I am very, very well experienced, as is Bob. So Ray, this is a good segue, as something Bridget just mentioned, into, you said the use of other agents. So under the topic of health services and nursing services, we currently have 14 individuals that the town pays for through the schools that are either part-time nurses, nurses assistant, psychologists. And one of the questions that I had as we were going through that, we have, if you go back over the past 6 years, it's anywhere between 13 and 16 individuals that get paid under that. And I got that from the books, this just going back, that information came right from our town reports. So if you look at that, is there any way that we can incorporate some of your recommendations through the schools by utilizing the people we already have?
The basic answer is yes, but it would require a coordination between the town and the schools. I don't know if their members are unionized with specific job responsibilities and titles. So providing them with a greater amount of responsibilities would need to be discussed. In a similar fashion, you have a staff member at the Council on Aging who's a registered nurse, but she doesn't perform. She may perform some things for the Council on Aging, but she doesn't perform most of the functions that normally are considered by either the VNA or a public health nurse. So the answer could be yes, but it would take discussion and a coordination. I'm going to say that, from the school's perspective, if they have 14 or 16 people, that their responsibilities and their time are all justified and taken. So John, the answer is yes, but you would need a discussion on that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sure I know everybody's pressed for time this evening, and I don't want to monopolize it. So I do have some other comments and questions, but I'd rather hear from both Robin and Bob, because you'll find, I'm sure you all know by now, that we will ask some of the similar questions, and I'd rather the color and the context come from all of us and not just one of us. So Robin?
So first of all, I'd like to say to Ray and Bridget, I thought you guys did a phenomenal job on the report.
Thank you.
I think, it definitely outlined some of the challenges that we faced as a community, specifically in connection with the Board of Health, that were highlighted by COVID and the additional stresses that COVID added to every community in the Commonwealth. I also thought you did a great job of laying out the different opportunities we have to professionalize the Board of Health, and I think really take away some of the functions that are being served by volunteers, which don't necessarily give you the continuity that we need or the professionalism to the organization. So I thought all of your recommendations were great. I thought you really highlighted very well the challenges that we face. And I think the report fits in very well with the kinds of frameworks that we're building or trying to build with all of our departments within the townhouse. And I was pleased to hear you say that you don't have to do everything all at once, but you start, and I think you're absolutely right. You start with a professional health agent, and you go from there and start seeing how that improves the kinds of things we're doing. So, it's actually one of the better reports, actually maybe even the best report that I've read in a while. So when I saw it and said 34 pages, I rolled my eyes, but it was actually really, it was a home run as far as I was concerned.
Thank you, Robin.
Thanks, Robin. Bob?
Thank you, John. Kay, did you want to say something before I opine, or are you okay?
Well, I can wait. Go ahead and I'll speak later.
Okay, no. I echo everything that Robin has said. There were a couple, when I went through the data, I went through it 2 or 3 times. It becomes clear to me, or it became clearer to me that, and I know this going back, Jerry went back to whatever, 5 or 6 years. I've known for a very long time that the Board of Health did a lot of operational activity. This highlights the level of that operational activity that goes on and some of the dysfunction that's caused by really a small town trying to do things as efficiently and as cost effective as they can. And people work to the tails off trying to get this stuff done. One of the things that's become, since I've been on the board in 2018, what's gone on is we've embarked on this process of modernization, trying to take a look at the different organizations within the town, the structures of the organization, the fact that we have a bunch of siloed operations that limit staff utilization across silos. We had incredibly minimal automation. It was just simply back in 2018 when I ran for office, the level was very, very poor. And we didn't have the automation, and we didn't have people who could help do the automation. That's all happened subsequent with this particular board's makeup. So silos. And then as I read through the recommendations, it's really hard to separate what existed in 2020 versus what existed in the latter part of 2020 in terms of activity and level of demand on the BOH. So that clouds, to me, it sort of clouds what we would need in a more normalized situation. I mean, these things come up every 100 or 400 years. I mean, you don't plan for that, right? You build an organization for the more current set of processes. And then Jerry did raise the point. As we begin to be a lot more strategic about automation, and we can do things like permitting or have better filing systems and better access to files, that will also have an impact, on what we need to do and who we need to do it. And then finally, I'm trying to sit here and go, it's really hard for me, given my background, to look at reports about making recommendations about staffing levels, unless there was a way to quantify the amount of work and the amount of time that needs to be done. You look at 23 communities, they're all different sizes. What works in one may not work for another, and I have no idea what the level of activity that flows through the Board of Health's office when it comes to the inspection side of the business. I do know that Jerry, oftentimes is flying into the townhouse in order to, help someone with a particular problem. And that just seems to me to be not the way we want the operations to work. So the long and short of it is, for me, it's pretty clear that we need a health agent to take care of the day-to-day operational activities that occur in the Board of Health. I mean, that should not fall on members of the board, the elected members of the Board of Health. That, like most other, although there are particular statutory requirements for the Board of Health. I mean, we on the Board of Selectmen have a town administrator to take care of the operational aspects. And I think that the Board of Health should have something similar so that they can focus on broader issues that you guys have talked about. That being said, I was happy to hear that you talked about a phase in approach to implementing the project, and I'm certainly interested in implementing the project. And I'm also interested in how we would set ourselves up to work our way through a number of the issues that you've mentioned and highlighted in your assessment. And it's clear to me that we should move on the health agent. It's not clear to me how we should approach some of the other things that you guys have brought up. I am very interested in the idea of regionalization. As a small town, where, it's just getting harder to find people to work in a town. Chris constantly talks about the difficulty of finding people with financial backgrounds who work in municipalities. So regionalization is something that we should be looking at very, very carefully as a way of leveraging other larger towns, et cetera, and minimizing demand on sort of management time inside the town. And that may apply to other areas. So, so I'm interested in understanding health agent job moving forward. That I'm very interested in hearing what the members of the Board of Health have to say and what their priorities would be. And then ultimately, I think the challenge will be to find a way of working through the complexity of the issues that you guys have raised, work out not just the staffing structure, but the management structure. Because one of the things that are a key goal for the Board of Selectmen,
strong and light, with sails that can pivot quickly.
hey, that was me being a ventriloquist. That was really the management side of it, because one of the things that we're trying to address as a Board of Selectmen is we're trying to minimize the number of professionals that we hire reporting to volunteer boards. We think that the professionals we hire should be managed by the professional staff. And in the case of the planning board, for example, we hired a land use director who reports sort of professionally into the town administrator that supports the planning board. And that way we can ensure continuity in performance evaluations, continuity in goal setting processes, and ultimately be in a position to do a good assessment of people's performance. And we need to be consistent about that. And it's hard to do when you're working with volunteer or elected officials. So to me, there's a whole raft of issues that we're going to have to wrestle through over time. But I agree with Robin that to me, it's critical to move on the health agent, and then we have to build a really good process to work through the rest of the recommendations. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you.
I would thank you, Bernie, but I don't think he did any work.
You're right, I didn't.
Through the chair, can I just address one comment that Bob made about quantifying the work? It's just important to note that obviously COVID created additional stress and all this sort of horrific work environments for the health department and the Board of Health, but it's also looking forward at what else you want to offer in your community. So what other types of public health programs might you want to see and what would be effective in your community? So for example, in the town of Norwood, they actually have a dental clinic for kids right within their health department. So every sort of health department, Board of Health has the capacity to make it what they want. So what other programs would you like to offer and support? I know that you guys do a lot of work with water. So is there an educational component for that you'd want that health agent to work towards? So it's not just the pandemic phase of the public health side and not just inspectional services, but what else do you want to offer to your community moving forward?
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. It's a very good way to frame that. And what I would like to do at this point is just as Bob was alluding to prior to his remarks, I'd like to hear from Dr. Peterson or Dr. Kresko with regards to just briefly their looking forward, their perspective, just as you framed, Bridget, that area of looking forward and where they see the priorities are in these specific topics. So Kay, would you like to take it from here?
Sure, thanks. So I want to say that I was very excited by this proposal. I think it really hits the spot in many ways, both in terms of the staffing recommendations and the technology recommendations. I think that I guess looking at it on high, it offers enhanced services that are really important, and this plan would get us out from under the requirement that the Board of Health members be willing and able to provide professional services to the town, working as staff members in the Board of Health. And I think that would be a major step forward. And I think these enhancements would come with relatively minimal financial repercussions. I don't know what the potential is for third-party billing from insurance companies for the nurses' work, but I would imagine it would be fairly significant. And that right now is, by the way, revenue that we leave on the table by turning it over to CVS when we have CVS come in and do our flu clinics every year. And we have not been able to do any COVID vaccines over the past 2 years of the pandemic. So there also is another opportunity. I'm a very strong advocate for having a part-time public health nurse as well. The pandemic is not gone, and though we've talked tonight about other possible kinds of activities that a nurse could take on, I think a key one still is managing the pandemic, and we really don't know whether we'll have another surge or not, but there are countless questions that need to be answered that come from townspeople, from businesses, from town departments and boards, and from nonprofits and town camps, schools, daycares, and there needs to be a professional person who has the time and ability to respond to these kinds of things. Even now, I would say our board members spend many hours a week dealing with the pandemic. It certainly was much worse a few months ago, but I don't think we can count on its going away. So I think it would behoove us to make the step forward to adding a public health nurse to our staff at this point. And obviously there are other areas that a public health nurse could get involved in, time permitting, but when the pandemic is here, that obviously trumps everything else. Which brings up a general benefit of this structure that Community Paradigm has proposed, and that is that having a health agent who's around full time, and having a public health nurse on staff, and having an administrative assistant who's there full time to work with those staff members means that there's the ability to pivot to respond to emergencies that happen, and because some public health work can be deferred, some of it can't, and it's without a staff that's accessible that way, it's impossible to pivot nearly as effectively. Right now, you're very vulnerable to who's on the Board of Health, and our particular skills and time availability happen to have made it possible to get through the pandemic, but it's been very challenging. And I think if without a change in the sense that that board members have to be able to provide professional services, it's going to be very hard to recruit and retain board members in the future. I'm not sure that I would have signed up for this had I known what was happening 2 years ago, but here we are. I've learned a new term recently, which is the concept of key person risk. It's a concept that I've understood, but I've never heard this term before, but I feel as if we have a lot of that right now. If any one of us were to be unavailable for an extended period of time, we'd be in big trouble. We have no bench. I think also that Bob spoke about who supervises professional staff in a board of health. Well, in a board of health, it is the board members who supervise the professional staff. That's the way it's structured. And I think it will be very important. It always has been important, but will continue to be important if we make these changes, to be sure that the board is focused on oversight of the Board of Health operations. The board should be doing oversight of the staff, and it should be doing policy. It should not be doing staff work, as I've said. Another benefit, I think, of having this kind of staffing is that I think both a health agent and a public health nurse would have the resources to search for and apply for more grant funding than our current staff are able to do. And I think that might have some additional financial benefits for us as a town. And I one final comment, and that has to do with what John said about the school nurses. Yes, there are several school nurses, more this year than there have been because of the need to add them because of COVID, but they are all fully committed, and there is no excess capacity among the school nurses. I've met many times over the past 2 years with school nurses and other members of leadership team, and they've been out straight having to add positions. So although coordination with the school nurses is a great thing to do, it's not a way to, there's no way to have efficiency of operation and be able to pick up some hours at no cost to the town. I would say the same is probably true for the Council on Aging nurse. I think her portfolio is full, given the number of hours she has.
Thank you, Kate. Steve, comments?
Well, certainly practically everything's been said, but I certainly want to go on the record as being fully in favor of all the recommendations of community paradigm. And I do want to add that in regard to key personnel, there are some exigencies that we may be facing in the next year that if one or two people move along, this board will become very dysfunctional, and having a health agent in place would obviate that risk.
Thank you, Steve. So at this point, Chris, I want to know from your standpoint if there's anything else that you would like to add. I also would like to just get a very brief comment, and I know Bob was being facetious, or whoever said it was being facetious with regards to Bernie Lynch and community paradigm, because there is a lot of work been done in this. So Chris, is there anything else procedurally that you would like to cover, or you would like us to address specifically?
Nope. The only thing that I'd mention, and it doesn't have to be discussed or voted on this evening, is just when the Board of Health has an opportunity to determine, what path or what recommendations they want to adopt and when, just so that can help inform whatever assistance that we need to provide, whether that's assisting with the recruitment of a new position, or whether that's, changes within this year's or next year's proposed budget. So I guess I just say that, I eagerly await any communication from the Board of Health as to what path they'd like to take moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
And then John, also, if I may, I apologize. Earlier, Bob had asked about citizen comment, and I mistakenly said that it was not listed, but the Board of Selectmen's agenda did list a citizen's comment. So if you could just at some point, Mr. Chairman, provide that opportunity to the folks on the call, that would be great.
Okay. I will do that just right after this. One last point I would like to make is to give Bernie Lynch just an opportunity, make a quick comment, and also on behalf of the board, Bernie, thank you for your involvement. I know this has been a lot of work, so would you like to make a quick comment with regards to this?
Sure, I'll make a very quick comment. No, I was, obviously Ray and Bridget did the work on this project, and certainly I think it, hopefully reflects the type of the caliber of work that Community Paradigm does. And I was very pleased with the report. I was very pleased with very pleased to hear the positive feedback tonight. I do think that it hits on a couple of key elements that I know are near and dear to the town of Dover, as well as sort of the direction of municipalities. One, it's in line with what the town is doing in terms of modernizing and professionalizing. I think it brings those elements to the public health sphere, and then I think it recognizes the importance. If we've learned anything, certainly over the last couple of years, we've learned the importance of public health. I think the recommendations that Ray and Bridget have put forth helps the Board of Health, which has been working diligently in these areas. It helps them achieve their goals. So I think there's many elements of this report that we can look at different lenses, but those two come immediately to mind for me. And I'm obviously very happy to hear that the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen found the report to be useful.
Well, Bernie, thank you for that. And I can say from this board, and I'm sure Bob and Robin will join me in saying this, that Community Paradigm has been an enormous help to us, from our finance, from the budget, from recruitment, to every phase that we've reached out and brought Community Paradigm in. And certainly Bridget and Ray have been a shining example of the work that you do and you continue to do for us. So on behalf of the board, thank you. All of you for the work and for your attention to detail in this process. I'd like to open it up to questions, and then I'll ask just Bob and Robin both for last comments before we wrap it up this evening. So Kate, I cannot see everyone from the chat room or from hands being raised all at the same time. I don't have the full gallery view on this evening. Could you please help me in terms of hands being raised and comments?
John, at the moment, the only citizens or other personnel who are here, resident is Justine Kent-Uritan, Carol Lisbon, the chair of the planning board, John Quackenbush, as I indicated, and he just made a comment. He's with the Harvard School of Public Health, and Maureen Callahan, who is the, I'll misquote it, district director or aide for Representative Denise Garlick. And then we do have a member of the Warrant Committee, Janet McCormick, here. So that's who are the attendees who you have not at this point yet called upon if they want to say anything.
Well said, Jerry. Thank you. If I just saw John's comment, and John, if you'd like to address the meeting this evening, go right ahead.
Sure. Thank you very much, John. And I'm happy to just sort of summarize what I put in the comment. I ended up getting involved in attending most of the Board of Health meetings this year in response to challenges that were coming from individuals in the community regarding COVID mitigation policies that the board had adopted. And one of the things I started to see from that vantage point was just how involved the Board of Health is in so many different aspects of the town. And I really applaud them and the agents like Mike who do assist them in carrying out their mandate within the town, which is really broad. But one of the things I've seen too is that, as Kay and Stephen and Jerry pointed out, they're really called on to do a lot of different things, and it takes up a whole lot of volunteer time. And because of the hodgepodge way in which a lot of these tasks are carried out, we see a lot of challenges from the community about things ranging from the mask mandates to meeting Title V for septic systems, and dealing with the past few years with water quality. And to me, it really seems like the adoption of a proposal like this, not in a phased way, but really in a full manner and as quickly as possible, would be transformative for the town. It would improve the speed of service for town residents, the quality and consistency of service, but it would also allow the town to provide a broader variety of services, right? Well, we might imagine phasing or trying to share services with other towns, or trying to share services across different groups in the town, like the schools. It really seems to me that the best way forward would be to start offering services that we could leverage and expand upon. And I know it's investment on the part of the town, but we've heard discussions of things like grants that the town could apply for to offset some of the costs, reimbursement for healthcare services that are offered, and some of the services potentially could even be charged for. Right? We have licensing fees for inspections of wells and septic systems, and I think this policy, when I read it, made a lot of sense. Because of my comments at the Board of Health, people have been encouraging me to considering running for the Board of Health. And the one thing that always caused me to hesitate to do that is just how much time the board currently spends. And I think in acknowledgement of the investment they've made, I think a really important contribution from the town overall would be to alleviate some of the work this board is doing on a volunteer basis that should really be done on a professional basis. Not that these aren't really qualified professionals, but somebody whose full-time job is to do it. And as Kay said, we're really risking, with so many of these tasks being carried out by volunteers, I think really risking the quality of service that the Board of Health and the town government provides. So I'm sorry for talking too long, but I really applaud the group that put this report together, and I really think it represents a major addition to the quality of life in town for everyone.
Thank you, John. Very, very well said. Thank you for your support and your activity on just as a member of the town. It is greatly appreciated. And John, I just want to share with you that the Minister for Recruitment to all boards in the town of Dover is Carol Lisbon. And Carol will be calling you shortly to invite you to a coffee, at the end of which you may find yourself even deeper involved in everything. Carol?
Just keep in mind, John is a very active member of the Capital Budget Committee. He's already very involved.
I have that seared into my memory. Carol Lisbon, Janet, Justine, you're the only three we have not heard from on with us this evening. Would either of you like to add anything, comments or questions?
Nothing from me. Thanks.
Thanks, Janet.
I am being uncharacteristically no comment. I just agree with everything that's been said tonight. Almost everything.
Thank you, Carol. Justine?
Yeah, I just have one comment. In general, it's an issue of checks and balances, I guess. I'm a little concerned with what appears to be a increasing bureaucracy in Dover. And we are only a town of about 6,000 people. And when I heard Community Paradigm, sorry, I forgot your name, referring to Norwood, which I think is something like 30,000. We're not that kind of town. And what I'm concerned about is the feedback loop between the electorate and the staff. And the positions right now that are elected primarily are selectmen, as we all know, planning board, board of health, school committee, right? Virtually, I may have forgotten something, but virtually everybody else is appointed, and increasingly by the selectmen. The problem I see here, or potential problem, I should say, is perhaps the checks and balances that we've seen go so awry in Washington, where when people get upset about things, if there's only one board, i.e. the selectmen, that potentially are aspiring to be in full control of all employees, that's only 3 people. And I like the idea. And I think Jerry mentioned it, maybe Kate, I can't remember, Kay, whether you also mentioned it, I think you did, that the staff under the Board of Health report to the Board of Health. Okay? I don't think they should be reporting, no offense, to Chris and the selectmen. And likewise with the land use director, to me, that's a very problematic position. I know we're not talking about this specifically today, but that particular staff person has 2 bosses. And I think that's a very difficult, which boss is she going to be really listening to? The Board of Selectmen boss or the planning board boss? So I think whatever you do decide to do, please respect the several different agencies that actually get elected by the residents, so that there are checks and balances here. I would hate to see everyone under the staff in Dover report to the selectmen. And that's no aspersion on the great job that Robin, John, and Robert have done. Okay, but that is my one major concern. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. I'd just like to, before we conclude this evening, thank Dave Sullivan and Kate O'Brien for their role in being part of this meeting this evening. This has been very informative, really helpful, excellent dialogue, a really deep understanding of the issues of the items at hand. So, Robin, Bob, any final thoughts or anything that you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
I don't have anything additional to say, just thank you. It was a really good report, highlighted, the issues that we face, and gave us a solution or a framework to move forward.
Thanks, Robin.
John?
Bob?
Gary, it's my turn, right?
I go ahead.
Thank you.
I just didn't want the meeting closed out.
I think that this was a good meeting. I'm glad we had everybody together. It's one of the rare occasions where I'm appreciative of the Zoom technology. And it worked well, and I'm glad everybody spoke their piece, and we can move on. So thank you all, everybody who participated, except for Bernie, and we'll see where we go from here.
Bernie,
Sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
I just want to sort of close it out from the Board of Health standpoint. Maureen has heard me on this, Kay has heard me, and Stephen, and I want to follow up on what John Quackenbush said. Speaking from the perspective of having been here for more years than I think anyone else on this, and probably more than most residents, when I was much younger and would go to, whether it was a town meeting or even before, and the town had maybe 1,000, 1,500 people Yeah, I don't even remember what it was. It was small. When development occurred, it always seemed to be in logical places. There wasn't any question that it was reasonable. I do remember as properties of the states came up and were split, that of course that gave more opportunity for development. I think the first major difficulty that I can remember occurring was now some 40 years ago, when an attorney by the name of William, oh my God, begins with an L, memory goes, tried to develop properties down on the end of Yorkshire, ignoring the fact that aerial photographs showed that there was standing water there. But realistically, until about 15 to 20 years ago, most development that came along, you could shake your head, but it was in some context, you could argue that it might be reasonable. In the past 10 years, and particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, as the pressure, as we now see it on real estate prices going up so high and the demand, we are now dealing with situations in which no reasonable person might consider what is being proposed as developable. And therefore, it has dramatically increased the amount of staff and other research time to support the conclusions of the board. And I therefore follow John Quackenbush in saying the faster we can get going on some aspects that will make that whole process more efficient and more responsive would dramatically improve the service to the town and its residents.
Thank you, Jerry. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I want to thank everyone who participated this evening and everyone for your time, energy, effort, and your dedication to the town and to what you do for us. I'm going to move to adjourn, ask for a second.
I was on mute. I'll second.
All in favor? I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Sprayett.
Bob, you could have stepped in for me, you know.
Yeah, Bob.
But
Bernie, did you beat Bob in golf or something that he's so mad at you? And
I don't know.
Steve Murray, that guy. What are you kidding?
I must have done something.
It's either golf or sailing. It's got to be one of those two.
It isn't sailing, I'll say
He
that.
went for coffee and he left me the bill.
Bernie, whatever you did, keep doing it. Just don't stop.
I will. Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.